Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment in every journey where silence becomes a form of betrayal. A moment where the weight of what we know becomes heavier than the comfort of saying nothing. For a long time, I carried that weight quietly. I convinced myself that people weren't ready to hear certain truths, that perhaps revealing too much too soon might create panic, confusion, or resistance. But what I've learned, often the hard way, is that truth delayed is still truth owed. And tonight, standing here, I can no longer keep silent. I should have warned you earlier. I've spent years studying the way we think, the way our biology silently drives our choices, and how our environment shapes our destiny far more than most of us ever imagine. We like to believe that we're in control, that we're making rational, conscious decisions every day, but in reality, much of what determines the direction of our lives begins beneath the surface. In the silent architecture of our brains, in the delicate dance of neurons, in chemical whispers that shape our fears, our desires, our ambitions, and even our blind spots. You see, human intelligence isn't just about what we know, it's about how we perceive what we know. The human brain, astonishingly complex, and yet dangerously fragile, is not designed to keep up with the velocity of the world we've built around it. Think about this. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors evolved to survive in small, slow-moving environments. We were wired to detect immediate danger, to rely on intuition, to respond to threats that were tangible and near. But today, the dangers we face are abstract, systemic, exponential. And that mismatch, the gap between how fast the world is changing and how slowly our biology adapts, creates a perfect storm. It's the storm I should have spoken about more openly. The storm where technology advances faster than regulation, where information floods faster than truth can filter through, where our nervous systems are constantly being hijacked by forces we don't even see. When a system grows too fast, without its guardians fully understanding its consequences, the cracks don't appear immediately. They form silently, deep within the foundation. And by the time they're visible, it's often too late to pretend they don't exist. I've witnessed this firsthand. I've seen scientists, engineers, policymakers, all brilliant minds, dive headfirst into innovation without truly pausing to ask, what does this do to the human mind? We measure success in speed, efficiency, scale, but rarely in psychological resilience. We have created technologies that can map the stars, but we have not taught ourselves how to navigate the space within our own heads. We've built systems that amplify everything, except human clarity. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I met a young engineer, bright, brilliant, barely in his 20s. He worked long nights, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with neural interfaces. He told me that connecting minds and machines felt like a way to make humans limitless. But when I looked at him, I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. His hands trembled slightly, not from caffeine, but from the weight of ambition running faster than understanding. Months later, he suffered a severe mental breakdown, not because his work failed, but because he succeeded faster than his mind could comprehend. He unlocked something he wasn't psychologically prepared to face. This isn't an isolated story. This is a warning. We're reaching a point where we are merging with our own creations, our technologies, our data, our machines, and yet we have no collective blueprint for the emotional and cognitive consequences of that merge. The human mind is extraordinary, but it's not infinite. It has limits. And when we pretend those limits don't exist, the cost isn't measured in code or capital. It's measured in human lives, in burnt-out geniuses, in fractured communities, in societies that can't tell the difference between reality and noise. For years, I told myself that progress must move fast. That hesitation is the enemy of innovation. But I was wrong to stay silent about the other side of that truth. Speed without psychological preparation is like handing a child a rocket before they've learned how to walk. It's not a gift. It's a gamble. Our nervous systems are ancient. They evolved to track the twitch of a predator in the bushes, not the algorithmic whisper of billions of signals flooding our brains every second. The limbic system, The emotional engine that helped our ancestors survive is being overstimulated in ways evolution never accounted for. That's why anxiety is rising globally. That's why collective attention spans are shrinking. That's why polarization feels like a force of nature. It's not just cultural, it's biological. And if we keep ignoring that, we're not just building a technological future, we're engineering a mental health collapse. I've sat in rooms with people who shape the future, and I've seen their brilliance. But I've also seen their blind spots. We talk endlessly about scaling innovation, but rarely about scaling emotional wisdom. We debate privacy laws and AI models, but seldom talk about what happens when human cognition can no longer anchor itself in reality. And here's the truth I should have said long ago: no matter how advanced our machines become, the fragile, beating, complex human brain will always be the foundation upon which everything rests. We cannot build a future that ignores that foundation. If the mind cracks, the system collapses. I remember standing in a lab one night, long after everyone else had gone home. The hum of machines filled the silence. I watched a robotic arm respond to neural signals transmitted from across the room. A miracle of engineering. But beneath that moment of awe, a quieter realization grew inside me. We are not just creating tools, we are rewiring reality. And every time we do, we are rewriting what it means to be human, whether we admit it or not. What we haven't fully understood is that technology doesn't just change the world. It changes us. It reshapes neural pathways. It alters attention cycles. It rewires reward systems. It dictates emotional rhythms. And it does so without asking for permission. Every scroll, every notification, every neural stimulus is a vote cast toward the kind of mind you'll have tomorrow. And most of us don't even realize we're voting. There's a hidden cost to this acceleration. It's not just misinformation or polarization. It's disconnection. Disconnection from our own bodies. Disconnection from the present moment. Disconnection from the slow, organic rhythm of human life that our ancestors depended on. We are increasingly living in a world where silence feels unbearable, stillness feels wrong, and constant stimulation feels normal. That's not evolution. That's manipulation. And I should have warned you earlier. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If we don't reclaim our minds, someone or something else will claim them for us. I've spent sleepless nights thinking about this. How every technological leap we make pulls the future closer, but also pulls humanity further from its natural equilibrium. We glorify hyper-productivity, infinite connection, real-time everything. But no biological organism can thrive in a state of permanent acceleration. Nature has rhythms for a reason: seasons, cycles, breaths between storms. Humanity has forgotten how to breathe. And it's not just individuals who pay the price. Societies do, democracies do. The structures that hold civilizations together depend on a shared perception of reality. But when billions of minds are living inside fractured, hyperstimulated attention loops, that shared perception begins to dissolve. We are not just losing focus, we are losing common ground. And a world without common ground is a world at war with itself. This isn't just theory. Neuroscientists have documented how prolonged exposure to high-speed, high-density information alters the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, and critical thinking. In other words, the very part of us that makes us human is being rewired by forces most people don't understand. I've had conversations with brilliant neurologists who've told me, we're not just facing a technological revolution, we're facing a cognitive reckoning. That sentence haunts me, because they're right. You see, evolution gave us a brain that thrives on meaning, not on noise, a brain that seeks narrative, not endless stimulation. And yet, we've built a world where meaning is buried beneath an avalanche of dopamine, triggering distractions. And every time we let that avalanche bury us, we lose a little more of our agency. There's a pattern I've seen emerge, quiet at first, but growing louder. People are feeling more tired, more anxious, more isolated, even as the world becomes more connected. Depression rates are climbing. Focus is fragmenting. The gap between human capacity and technological reality is widening. And the most dangerous part, most people think this is just how life is now. But it isn't. It's how we've designed life to be. And what we design, we can redesign. I should have said this years ago. The greatest threat to humanity isn't the technology itself. It's the speed at which we're adapting to it, or failing to. Think of a bridge. You can build a stunning, futuristic structure. But if the foundation underneath it wasn't designed for the weight, the bridge will collapse. Not because the design was evil, but because the foundation was ignored. Humanity's mind is that foundation. And so tonight, I'm asking you to look deeper than the headlines, deeper than the code, deeper than the glowing screens. Look inward, because that's where this battle is being fought, not in boardrooms or laboratories, but in the neural pathways of billions of brains. For years, I feared that saying these things might slow innovation, might make people uncomfortable, might make me look like I was doubting the very progress I helped build. But silence is not protection. It's permission for danger to grow in the dark. What happens next isn't inevitable. But it does depend on what we choose to see and what we choose to ignore. And we've ignored the human mind for too long. We need to rebuild the scaffolding around our own consciousness. We need to design technologies not just for profit, not just for scale, but for mental resilience. We need to create systems that respect the cognitive bandwidth of human beings. We need to slow down in order to speed up wisely. I know that sounds paradoxical, but the most powerful systems in nature operate with rhythm, not chaos. Heartbeats, brainwaves, planetary orbits, they all follow patterns that allow sustainability. Our technological heartbeat has become erratic. We need to bring it back into rhythm with human biology, not race ahead of it. There's a reason why, despite all our advancements, we still yearn for quiet places, for real conversations, for moments of stillness. That yearning isn't weakness. It's our evolutionary memory whispering, "Remember who you are." It's the part of us that hasn't been fully overwritten by the machine. Not yet. I remember walking through a remote desert years ago. No signal, no devices. Just the endless horizon and the sound of my own footsteps in the sand. For the first time in months, my thoughts felt whole, not scattered, not fighting for bandwidth. Whole. It struck me then, clarity doesn't always come from adding more information. Sometimes, it comes from subtracting the noise. That's the warning I should have given earlier. We are overloading our cognitive architecture. We are mistaking stimulation for intelligence. We are equating speed with progress. But true progress requires clarity, and clarity requires space to breathe. When I look at the next decade, I don't just see rockets or AI or neural networks. I see the battle for human consciousness intensifying. And make no mistake, it is a battle between noise and meaning, between manipulation and awareness, between technology that serves humanity and technology that consumes it. This is not about abandoning progress. It's about anchoring it to something real, something deeply human. Because if we lose that anchor, all our innovations will float aimlessly, powerful but unmoored, brilliant but dangerous. Action begins not with grand gestures, but with awareness, quiet, radical awareness of what's happening inside our own minds. If we cannot sense the temperature of our own attention, if we cannot feel when our inner architecture is being pulled apart, then we become passive vessels in someone else's experiment. We must stop treating the human mind like a limitless resource to be mined. It is not infinite. Every notification steals a fragment of your focus. Every algorithm shapes your neural pathways. Every overstimulated hour carves a deeper groove into the circuitry of your brain. And the more those grooves are carved, the harder it becomes to climb out of them. I've spent years around the sharpest engineers, the brightest neuroscientists, the most visionary thinkers. And what I've come to realize is this intelligence is not measured by how much we build, but by how much of ourselves we don't lose in the process. We can build machines that calculate, systems that learn, algorithms that adapt, but none of them can replace the fragile beauty of human awareness. Let me share another story. A close colleague of mine, a neurologist with a mind sharper than any algorithm, once told me about a patient. This patient was a software developer who spent 12 to 14 hours a day in front of screens. His life was efficient, optimized, hyper, connected. But slowly, imperceptibly, he began to lose his sense of time. Days blurred, nights vanished. Conversations became harder to follow. His thoughts fragmented like shattered glass. The scans showed no physical disease. His brain was structurally healthy. But functionally, something was different. The neural pathways responsible for sustained attention had weakened. His dopamine response cycles had shortened dramatically. His brain wasn't broken. It had adapted to an environment designed to fragment it. That story isn't rare anymore. It's becoming a pattern, and patterns, when ignored, become destinies. I used to think humanity's greatest challenge would be building machines smarter than us. But I've come to understand the deeper challenge preserving what makes us human in the presence of those machines. Awareness, reflection, choice. The ability to step back and ask, what is this doing to me? The most dangerous shifts are never the ones announced with loud alarms. They're the ones that creep in silently, like a slow drift, like a river eroding its banks grain by grain. One day, you wake up and realize the landscape has changed, and you never noticed it happening. We are living in that slow drift right now, a drift where our capacity to focus, to feel deeply, to think independently is being eroded, not by malicious actors alone, but by the very systems we've built to make life easier. Systems that whisper, not shout, that nudge, not command, and in those whispers, we lose ourselves. I don't say this to scare you. I say it because the first step to reversing a drift is naming it. The second is remembering that we have agency. We still do, for now. We need to build what I call cognitive firewalls. Just as we protect our networks from intrusion, we must learn to protect our attention from uninvited trespassers. That means rethinking how technology interfaces with our biology, not designing to exploit our weaknesses, but to support our strengths. Not feeding the limbic system like a slot machine, but cultivating the prefrontal cortex like a garden. Imagine if our digital systems were built to encourage restraint rather than addiction. Imagine if interfaces were designed to synchronize with natural human rhythms, instead of hijacking them. Imagine if every innovation came with an ethical responsibility to protect the mental scaffolding of those who use it. That is not utopian. It's necessary, because if we don't build with intention, we will inherit the consequences of our neglect. When I walk through our labs today, I see brilliance. I see possibilities that can rewrite entire chapters of human history. But I also see something else, a quiet fragility in the faces of the people building that future. They're running faster than their nervous systems were designed to run. And deep down, they know it. We live in a world that glorifies constant acceleration. If you're not moving fast enough, you're told you'll be left behind. But what if moving fast isn't always the right metric? What if the future doesn't belong to the fastest, but to the most conscious? The most resilient systems on Earth are not the fastest. They are the most adaptive. Nature doesn't sprint endlessly. It cycles. It rests. It regenerates. It listens. We need to learn from that again. I should have warned you earlier that the very tools we celebrate can just as easily turn into cages. Not cages with bars, but with invisible walls of constant stimulation, carefully engineered dependency, and quiet erosion of inner silence. This is why neuroscience matters more than ever, because the battlefield isn't out there, it's in here. In the way the amygdala responds to threat, in the way dopamine rewards are wired, in the way prefrontal control weakens under chronic distraction. This is not abstract theory. It's measurable, repeatable, undeniable reality. I once saw a demonstration in a neuroimaging lab that shook me. A subject was placed under an fMRI scanner. The task was simple: read a long, uninterrupted text without checking a device. Within minutes, their default mode network, responsible for internal reflection and sustained thought, lit up beautifully. The brain was calm, focused, alive. Then the researchers introduced short, unpredictable notifications. Within seconds, those same regions dimmed. cognitive load spiked, the ability to sustain meaning fractured. That's what's happening to billions of people every single day. And no one sent out a warning label. The more I reflect on this, the more I realize our future depends not just on technological literacy, but on cognitive literacy. The ability to understand how our minds work, the courage to design environments that honor that, and the discipline to choose clarity over convenience. It's easy to say, we should disconnect more, but this isn't just about turning off phones. It's about reclaiming sovereignty over attention. It's about creating societies where deep thought is not a luxury, but a norm, where silence is not suspicious, but sacred, where stillness isn't weakness, but strength. I've seen what happens when a mind gets quiet, when the noise fades and the inner voice finally has room to speak. That moment is powerful. It's the birthplace of innovation, not the artificial kind, but the deeply human kind. We are not slaves to the trajectory of our inventions. We are their architects. But architects who forget the laws of physics eventually watch their buildings fall. And the physics of the human mind cannot be rewritten by sheer willpower. It must be respected. I should have said this before the acceleration became a roar, before we mistook overstimulation for evolution. But it's not too late to speak it now. It's not too late to act. We can build technologies that align with human rhythms. We can teach societies how to breathe again. We can design for depth instead of distraction, for awareness instead of addiction. And it begins with every one of us choosing differently. Not someday, not theoretically, but right now. I've often been asked, what keeps you up at night? And the answer has changed over time. It used to be the fear of failure. Then it was the pressure to build faster. But now what keeps me up is simpler, heavier. The fear that we might win the race to build the future, only to lose ourselves in the process. But fear isn't the ending of this story. Awareness is the beginning of a new one. I believe in human ingenuity. I believe in our ability to adapt, not just externally, but internally. I believe that if we dare to face the uncomfortable truths, we can rewrite this trajectory before it hardens into destiny. And I believe that if we can learn once again to protect what's happening inside our minds, then no external force, no machine, no algorithm, no acceleration will ever truly own us. So tonight, let these words not be remembered as a confession, but as a turning point. The warning has been spoken. The choice now belongs to us. You are not powerless. You never were. The world may be loud, but your awareness is louder. The noise may be endless, but your clarity is infinite if you dare to find it. This is your mind, your future, your humanity. Protect it. I should have warned you earlier, but I'm here now, and so are you. And together, if we choose wisely, that is enough.